A millionaire saw his humble employee helping the homeless and made an offer that changed her life. Before we begin the story, leave a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Emily Carter was 26. She'd worked at Miller Enterprises for 3 quiet, uneventful months. Every morning she arrived on time, kept her head down, filed reports, answered emails. Her life was tidy, simple. A rented 1-bedroom apartment, secondhand shoes, coupons clipped from Sunday ads. She never complained, never stood out. And perhaps that's why no one really noticed her. But each evening, when the office lights dimmed and most workers rushed home to warm dinners and TV screens, Emily's day wasn't over. She had her own quiet ritual. She'd walk 2 blocks to the corner market. Same cashier, same short list. A loaf of bread, bottled water, granola bars or maybe muffins if they were on sale. And then she'd cross the street to a stretch of sidewalk outside the glass tower she worked in, where 5 or 6 familiar figures huddled against the cold concrete. Men and women weathered by life, their possessions stuffed into torn bags, their names forgotten by most. "Back again, sweetheart," old Marvin would say, lips curled into a toothless grin. "Got anything good today?" Paul asked, trying to sound casual, but his eyes always gave him away. "Still warm," Emily smiled, unzipping a paper bag. "Cinnamon muffins tonight." She didn't say much. She never lingered long. But her presence brought something that bread alone couldn't offer. Kindness, steady, quiet, unshakable. She never posted about it, never told her co-workers, never once asked for anything in return. It was just something she did. And she thought no one noticed. But someone did. From the 35th floor, through a wall of spotless glass, someone had been watching. Not just once, not by accident, every night. And that man, Logan Miller, CEO of the empire she worked for, was starting to realize that the most extraordinary thing he'd seen in years was the young woman who bought muffins for strangers and never asked for thanks. 35th floor, the CEO's office, silent, pristine, sterile like a laboratory. Dark hardwood floors without a single scuff, walls of glass reflecting the city skyline, not a single item out of place. Everything, and everyone, was expected to make sense. Logan Miller, 36, stood near the floor-to-ceiling window, hands in his pockets, eyes locked on the street below. He was the kind of man people didn't address by name unless they had to. A CEO respected for his results, feared for his coldness, admired for his discipline. But today marked the 10th time. He saw her, that same small figure, thin, quiet, carrying a brown paper bag across her chest as she crossed the street. Like clockwork, she sat down beside the homeless group gathered outside the building. She handed something out. Bread, water, maybe a granola bar, and always a gentle smile. Every day, same time, no cameras, no phone, no audience. Logan squinted, his thoughts sharpening. What does she get out of this? In his world, no action came without purpose. Kindness, if it existed, was a form of currency, an investment seeking a return. But this girl, there was nothing coming back to her. He turned away, but his mind kept circling. If I helped her, would that make me soft? I'm a CEO, not a knight. That last line, he clung to it like armor. Because Logan knew what happened when you let the wrong person in. Years ago, he'd trusted someone, a friend he considered family. That man stole from him, took advantage of his trust to siphon shares, and nearly sink the company he built from scratch. Since then, Logan had lived by one rule. No one gives without wanting something back. And yet, from this high tower of glass and numbers, watching her kneel beside the forgotten, giving without hesitation or reward, He felt something unfamiliar. Distraction. The budget report remained untouched on his desk. His inbox flooded. A scheduled 4 p.m. meeting was quietly postponed, all because of one quiet girl, doing one quiet thing, with no one watching. Inside the finance department of Miller Enterprises, the late afternoon light filtered through wide office windows, casting a soft golden haze over the cubicles. The hum of fluorescent lights was constant, broken only by the clicking of keyboards and the occasional murmur of co-workers discussing quarterly reports. Emily Carter sat at her desk near the far end of the room, her brown hair loosely tucked behind her ears, sleeves rolled halfway up her forearms. She was focused, eyes narrowed, hands flipping through a thick stack of documents, carefully cross-referencing numbers and notes. Her cubicle, like her personality, was understated. A small photo of a dog she once rescued, a sticky note with a handwritten quote, "Do what you can, with what you have, where you are." And a coffee mug that had long gone cold. She was so caught up in her task that she didn't notice the shift in atmosphere, the subtle quiet that descended as someone entered the room. Then came the shadow, a tall, sharp silhouette cut across her desk. Emily paused. Slowly she looked up, and time stilled for just a second. Logan Miller, in his trademark charcoal suit. Crisp, impeccable, powerful. He rarely came to this floor, never unannounced, and certainly not to speak with junior staff. The man was a legend up there on the 35th floor, a figure more often whispered about than seen. "Emily Carter?" His voice was low, smooth and deliberate, not unkind but not warm either, like someone who measured every syllable before speaking. Her heartbeat skipped. "Yes, that's me." She straightened, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. He looked at her for a beat, eyes cool but unreadable. "How long have you been working here?" She blinked. 3 months. Another pause. A longer one. "And do you like your job?" The question seemed simple, but something about it felt off. It wasn't in the typical tone of a CEO checking performance metrics. It felt personal. "I do," she answered carefully. "It's challenging. I've learned a lot." Logan nodded, as if ticking off a mental checklist. No expression, no small talk, not even a hint of why he was standing there. Then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he turned and walked away. No further comment. No explanation. Emily sat frozen for a moment, stunned. Her fingers still rested on the edge of her notepad, but her mind was elsewhere. What just happened? She glanced around, half expecting her co-workers to whisper or react, but no one moved. It was as if Logan Miller had stepped in, spoken, and vanished like a ghost that only she had seen. Upstairs, Logan re-entered his office without a word. He stood by the window, looking out over the city. But his thoughts weren't on sales projections or investor calls. They were on her, on the girl who spoke with quiet conviction, who looked up at him not with fear, but with clarity. And he hated the way her words lingered. "I've learned a lot. I do like it." No need to impress, no attempt to flatter, just honest. He didn't understand why he'd gone down there, why he'd said anything at all. He'd told himself it was curiosity, a passing impulse. But the truth? She had gotten under his skin, and he didn't like that. Not one bit. The sky was a flat, steel gray, and the bitter wind scraped through the narrow city streets like invisible knives. Winter hadn't officially arrived, but no one had told the wind that. It bit through coats, stung at fingertips, and reminded the world that warmth was a luxury not all could afford. Emily Carter emerged from the small discount store clutching a modest bundle, a thick woolen blanket wrapped in a plastic bag, a pair of second-hand men's boots with barely worn soles, and a few small items tucked in between, some fruit, 2 granola bars, a box of Band-Aids. Her coat was thin, her hands red from cold, but her heart felt full. She crossed the street, the city around her a blur of glowing taillights and distant sirens, and walked straight to where she always went. There, huddled beneath the building's awning, were familiar faces. Mr. Marvin, Paul, Ellen, a few others whose names she still didn't know, but whose gratitude was always the same. Marvin lit up when he saw her. "You're back," he said, teeth chattering, eyes shining. "I told you she'd come," Paul muttered, pulling his hoodie tighter. Emily didn't say much. She never did. She handed Marvin the blanket, gently placed the boots next to Paul, and gave Ellen a bottle of juice. No grand gestures, no speeches, just presence. And then, when it was done, she checked the time and realized something she'd overlooked in her generosity. She had no money left for a ride home, not a dime. So, she walked. Her apartment wasn't far, maybe an hour on foot, but as the wind howled louder and her steps grew slower, the fatigue caught up. Her shoes, cheap, worn, never meant for cold, rubbed blisters into her heels. Her breath came out in visible clouds, and her fingers, tucked into shallow coat pockets, were beginning to go numb. Then, the sound of an engine, a sleek black car rolled up beside her, quiet as a whisper. The tinted window lowered, and there he was. Logan Miller. His suit jacket was off, sleeves rolled up, one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting against his jaw, expression unreadable, except for the crease between his brows that hadn't been there earlier that day. He didn't speak right away. He just looked at her flushed cheeks, her shaking hands, her soaked shoes. "How far were you planning to walk?" he finally asked, voice calm, almost detached, but something in his tone cracked. Emily blinked, startled. "Home," she answered, like it was obvious. "Alone? In this weather?" "I'm fine," she said quickly, too quickly. "Really?" He didn't buy it. "Don't try to act strong," Logan said, his voice now tinged with quiet firmness. "Just get in." There was no command, no demand, just an invitation. Emily hesitated. Every instinct screamed that this was strange, wrong, too personal. But then the cold wind cut through her coat again, and her toes had gone completely numb. She opened the door and slid in. Silence filled the car. Warmth wrapped around her like a blanket she didn't realize she needed. Leather seats, soft music playing low in the background. Worlds away from the sidewalk she had just left. Logan glanced at her, his jaw tightening. Then, without a word, he pulled into traffic. They drove in silence for several blocks, until finally he asked, "You spent everything, didn't you?" Emily didn't turn her head. "Yes." He looked at her briefly, then back at the road. "Why?" "For them." A pause. "You realize that's not practical." "I know," she said simply. "But it's right." Logan didn't respond. He kept driving, eyes fixed on the road. But something had shifted. Not in the car, not in the air, but in him. That single sentence, "but it's right," lodged somewhere deep. By the time they reached her building, neither had said much else. Emily reached for the door handle. "Thank you," she said softly. Before stepping out, she turned to him one last time. "And thank you for caring." Then she was gone, disappearing into the stairwell. And Logan? He sat there, hands still on the wheel. Because for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like the man who always had control. He felt something else entirely. And it scared him. The rain had settled into a steady rhythm, tapping gently against the windshield like a quiet metronome. Inside the luxurious black sedan, the warmth of the heater clashed with the emotional tension quietly growing between its two passengers. Emily Carter sat in the passenger seat, her coat still damp from the drizzle outside, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, and perhaps a little from the presence of the man sitting beside her. Logan Miller, CEO of Miller Enterprises, was a man known for controlling rooms with silence. But in this moment, inside the soft hum of his own car, that same silence was betraying him. It wasn't control. It was confusion. He finally spoke, eyes still fixed on the road ahead. "You spent all your money today?" Emily turned her head, her voice soft but certain. "Yes." He frowned slightly, turning toward her. "All of it?" She nodded. He leaned back slightly, a cynical note creeping into his voice. "Let me guess. You gave it to the same people who sit out front of our building every night?" She didn't flinch. "That's right." A dry chuckle escaped him, not out of humor, but disbelief. He shook his head slowly, as if trying to make the pieces fit. "You do realize that's not sustainable, right?" "I do." His jaw flexed, his grip on the steering wheel tightening as they waited at a red light. The wipers swiped once, then again. "You think that was a smart decision?" This time she smiled, just faintly. "No, it wasn't smart, but it was the right one." Logan blinked, caught off guard by the clarity in her response. He turned to fully face her now, something in his expression shifting, softening, despite himself. "Why?" he asked, his voice quieter now. There was no accusation in it anymore. Just curiosity. Sincere. Disarmed. Emily didn't answer right away. She looked out the window. Outside, the city lights were blurred by raindrops, turning the world into a watercolor of neon and shadow. Then she spoke, her voice carrying the weight of a memory not yet told. "I don't help them because I have extra," she said. "I help them because I remember what it felt like to have nothing. No backup, no options, no one." She paused, gathering her thoughts, then turned back to him. "I remember sitting on a park bench with $37 to my name, wondering if I should eat or save it for a bus ticket to nowhere. I remember wishing, just once, that someone would see me, that someone would care." The rain kept falling. The car remained still. But inside Logan Miller's chest, something cracked. Not shattered. Not yet. But cracked, like the first quiet fracture in a dam. The kind you pretend isn't there, until the water finds its way through. No one talked to Logan like that. No one ever said things without an angle, without hoping to gain something in return. He had built an empire on that belief. Everyone wanted something. But this woman, she wanted nothing. Except maybe to matter. And damn it, she did. He tried to mask the discomfort with logic, with distance. "You still shouldn't walk home in the rain because of it." "I wasn't planning to," she said with a slight grin. "I just didn't plan to run out of cash either." He exhaled, leaning back against the headrest, and then came the quietest admission. "You're different." She raised an eyebrow. "Different good or different reckless?" He glanced at her, and this time there was a flicker of something new in his eyes. Not pity, not amusement, respect. "I haven't decided yet," he murmured. They drove the rest of the way in thoughtful silence. But what neither of them said, what hung in the air between stolen glances and half-finished thoughts, was this. In a world ruled by power, wealth, and careful calculations, one act of selfless compassion had just rewritten the rules. And Logan Miller, the man who believed in nothing but numbers, had started to believe in something far more dangerous. Someone. The office lights flickered on overhead, humming their usual sterile glow. Emily Carter, dressed in her simple navy cardigan, sat quietly at her cubicle, eyes scanning the quarterly report for the third time. Numbers lined up. Margins checked. Her notes were neat, her calculations precise. She sipped her coffee, cold again, and smiled to herself. Another task, almost done. She didn't notice the HR director approaching until a shadow loomed over her desk. "Emily?" the woman said softly, too softly. "Can you come with me for a moment?" No explanation. No expression. Just the kind of voice people use when bad news is coming. Emily followed, heart pounding. She tried to read the woman's face, but it was unreadable. Professional, detached. Inside the HR office, 2 others were already seated, papers in hand. "Emily," one of them began, "an irregularity has been found in the recent financial report. Your name is on the final review." Emily blinked. I don't understand." "We're placing you on temporary suspension, effective immediately, pending further investigation." Her mouth went dry. "I didn't falsify anything. I followed protocol." They slid the paper across the desk. "You may go home now." No more questions. No time to explain. 10:47 a.m. The hallway was silent. Emily stood outside the glass conference room, gripping the letter. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. The whispers had already started. "She's the one." "That report cost us thousands. Always the quiet ones." Co-workers she'd greeted every morning now looked past her. The warmth she once brought into this cold office, wiped clean in an hour. By lunchtime she was gone. Logan Miller stared at the email. Subject: Urgent. Emily Carter suspension notice. His eyes narrowed. Something didn't sit right. Emily? That girl who brought granola to the homeless? The one who never missed a deadline and never asked for praise? He tapped a pen against his desk. Once. Twice. Then stopped. "Pull the raw data," he told his assistant. "Not the summary. I want every original entry reviewed." The office was dark, but Logan was still there. Tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. Spreadsheets covered his desk, highlighter marks circling discrepancies. He'd found the error. It wasn't Emily. It was a senior analyst. A careless misstep, swept under the rug. And Emily had signed off last, unknowingly. He stared out at the city below, lights blinking in the silence. The girl who gave away her dinner was paying for someone else's mistake. And something inside him, something long buried beneath layers of cynicism, tightened. The finance team filed into the boardroom for what they thought was a routine meeting. Logan stood at the head of the table, a folder in his hand. "Let me be clear," he began, voice cool and even. "Emily Carter did not alter or falsify any data." Chairs shifted, eyes darted. "The error came from within this team. I found it myself. And yet no one questioned the process before pointing fingers." Silence. He placed the folder on the table. "You've damaged the reputation of an honest employee, someone this company should be proud of." He turned to the head of HR. "I expect a formal written apology from every manager involved in her suspension, delivered by end of day, publicly." Then he looked around the room again, voice low but razor sharp. "If this company starts punishing integrity, we've already lost everything that matters." Emily sat alone in her apartment, curled up on the couch, a blanket around her knees, the world outside gray and silent. Her phone buzzed. Logan Miller. "Check your email." She opened it. Her breath caught. Subject: Reinstatement and apology from Miller Enterprises Executive Office. Message: Ms. Carter, on behalf of Miller Enterprises, we extend our sincerest apologies. You have been fully reinstated with immediate effect, along with a performance bonus for your work on the quarterly report. We value your integrity more than words can express. Then a second text appeared. Logan Miller. "You didn't just clear your name. You reminded this place what honor looks like. Emily stared at the screen, silent. For the first time in days, she smiled. In the days following the chaos, Miller Enterprises didn't hold any meetings about changing company culture. No emails, no mission statements. But the shift was undeniable. The air felt different, softer, less hurried. And at the center of it all stood Emily Carter, a quiet presence now impossible to overlook. She was no longer the overlooked assistant in the back corner. She had a seat at the big table now. Some raised their eyebrows, wondering why someone without an MBA or executive title was sitting beside senior directors. But when Logan Miller turned in the middle of a high-stakes meeting and asked, "Emily, what do you think?" the room went still. No one typed. No one shuffled paper. Everyone listened. She didn't dominate. She didn't try to prove herself. She spoke when it mattered, with clarity and care. And her words, often the unspoken truths others were too afraid to voice, hung in the air long after she finished. Logan didn't need to nod. His body already did. Each time she spoke, he leaned in. Quietly. Attentively. One Friday afternoon, Logan showed up at her office. No assistant, no calendar invite, just him, with a calm expression and a question. "There's a little place that makes a mean lasagna. Want to try it with me?" Emily looked up, surprised, but nodded. The restaurant was small, tucked on a side street away from the skyline. No flashy lights, just warm wooden tables, soft candlelight, and faint Italian music humming through old speakers. Logan didn't bring his phone. No notes, no strategy deck, just a glass of wine in front of him, and a man, finally at rest. "I used to think if I was smart enough, strategic enough, cold enough, I could control everything," he said, swirling the glass. "But then you came along, quiet, without expectations, and somehow you reminded me of what actually matters." Emily listened. No need to fill the silence. The breeze from the window stirred the smell of fresh bread through the room. Her hair moved gently, her expression calm, like a morning with no deadline. Logan studied her quietly. "You made me realize being human matters more than being a CEO." After dinner, they stepped out into the evening. The city was alive, but not loud. Cool air brushed between them. They walked slowly. Sometimes their eyes met, only to glance away. Like two rivers nearing each other, unsure but certain. Under a soft streetlight, Logan stopped and took a breath. Have you ever felt like someone walked into your life and nothing's been the same since, not because they tried, just because they existed? Emily didn't speak. She just smiled, the kind of smile that says everything without words. And in that moment, Logan understood. Not with his head, but with something he hadn't trusted in years. He leaned in. Slowly. Not out of impulse, but out of quiet conviction. And kissed her. Not urgently. Not dramatically. Just honestly. A kiss that said, "Thank you," and "I see you," and "maybe this is the start of something real." She didn't pull away. She didn't lean closer. She simply let it happen. Because sometimes two worlds don't collide. They quietly align, through one shared, undeniable heartbeat. And that night, in a city that never sleeps, they heard it. Together. A single photograph, Emily and Logan exiting a quiet midtown restaurant, captured by a curious bystander, set off a chain reaction. By morning, the image had circulated through the company's internal channels via an anonymous email, rapidly becoming the epicenter of office gossip. Though no one confronted her directly, Emily felt the shift. Polite smiles now carried undertones of judgment. Whispered conversations ceased abruptly as she approached. Some colleagues spoke just loud enough for her to overhear. "Guess dinner dates are the new way to climb the corporate ladder." Smart move. Why work hard when you can just date the CEO? Emily absorbed each word in silence. She didn't defend herself, didn't shed tears. But inside, she was unraveling. The workplace, once a sanctuary of ambition, now felt suffocating. That afternoon, she left early, her steps light, but her heart weighed down by the burden of misunderstanding. Her fear wasn't of losing her job, but of losing her integrity. The thought that her genuine efforts and values could be misconstrued as manipulative tactics was devastating. The following morning, an unexpected company-wide meeting was announced, set for the expansive conference room on the 35th floor. Speculation buzzed among employees. Impromptu gatherings formed as theories flew. It was unprecedented for Logan Miller, the CEO, to call such a sudden assembly. As the staff settled, Logan entered, alone, devoid of the usual entourage or presentation materials. He stood at the room's center, exuding a calm yet commanding presence. In our professional journeys, he began, his voice steady and resonant, we anticipate challenges, strategize for market shifts, and navigate financial complexities. But there's an element often overlooked, yet paramount, our character. He scanned the room, his gaze momentarily resting on Emily, seated unobtrusively at the back. Recently, I've become aware of circulating rumors about myself and a valued member of our team. The room was enveloped in silence. Let me be unequivocal. This individual has neither sought favoritism nor leveraged personal relationships for professional gain. She embodies dedication, humility, and, above all, kindness, even when no one is watching. He took a deliberate step forward, his expression resolute. If such virtues are not recognized and celebrated here, then we've deviated from our core principles. We risk becoming a soulless entity driven by prejudice rather than purpose. He paused, allowing his words to resonate. And personally, I refuse to let baseless chatter drive away someone I deeply respect and care for. The weight of his statement hung in the air. Emily sat motionless, her breath caught between disbelief and relief. She sensed the collective gaze shifting, not with suspicion, but with newfound respect. No applause followed. None was needed. The authenticity of the moment spoke louder than any ovation ever could. The night was quiet. The city, usually pulsing with sirens and flickering billboards, seemed to pause, as if holding its breath. Inside Logan Miller's penthouse, the world felt far removed from boardrooms, stock reports, and profit margins. There were no chandeliers, no sweeping orchestras, no cameras waiting to capture the moment, just soft lighting. A few white lilies in a simple vase, a table for two by the floor-to-ceiling windows. Candles flickered gently, casting a golden hue across the polished floor and catching the shimmer of a small velvet box lying silently in the center of the room. Emily stood in the doorway, unsure whether she was intruding on something sacred or being invited into something she'd never imagined for herself. Her eyes scanned the room. Nothing extravagant, but everything intentional. Personal. Logan didn't speak at first. He walked toward her, calm but visibly nervous, the way a man does when his next words might change his entire life. And perhaps for the first time since she had met him, there was no armor, no CEO, no distance, just Logan. He took her hand gently, as though it was the most fragile truth he'd ever held. "Emily," he said, voice low, careful, and full of something that hadn't existed in him until her. "You've taught me something I never thought I'd need to learn." She looked up at him, eyes wide, waiting, not for a declaration, but for a truth. "You taught me that warmth, real warmth, can't be bought. That kindness, when it's given without reason, leaves the deepest mark. That a life calculated for control is no life at all." He reached behind him and opened the small velvet box. Inside sat a ring, not ostentatious, but elegant. A single stone, clear as the emotion in his voice. "I used to think I didn't believe in love," Logan continued, his thumb gently brushing her hand. "But the truth is, I was just afraid of needing someone." He stepped closer. "Emily Carter, would you walk beside me? Not as my employee, not as the woman who changed how I see the world, but as the one I want to share it with?" Tears welled in her eyes, not because of the ring or the setting, but because the man before her had stripped away everything he once thought made him powerful, and was standing there with nothing but vulnerability and hope. She didn't say a word. She nodded. And when she did, Logan smiled. Not the rehearsed grin of a man who closed another deal, but the tender, unguarded smile of someone who, for the first time, allowed love to find its way in. There were no fireworks, no applause, just two people, once strangers from opposite ends of a cold, indifferent world, now standing in the quiet glow of something rare, something real. The ceremony was held in a small community garden tucked between two aging brick buildings on the quiet edge of the city. No paparazzi, no string quartet, no gold-trimmed invitations sent to the elite. There were no designer gowns, no lavish centerpieces, no socialites checking their watches. Instead, there were wooden benches, borrowed folding chairs, and a white sheet draped gently over a trellis of ivy and hand-picked daisies. The afternoon sun fell softly through the leaves, casting a warm, golden light on the simple scene. A breeze carried the faint scent of fresh bread and lavender through the garden, blending into the quiet hum of life, continuing just beyond the fence. In the front row sat Marvin, wearing an old suit that someone had kindly tailored just for today. Paul, his shoes shined to a mirror gleam, straightened his thrift store tie nervously, wiping his palms against his trousers. Around them were others, faces weathered by hardship, but now lit with joy. Each one had once received a sandwich, a blanket, or a moment of warmth from a woman who never asked for anything in return. Emily walked down the makeshift aisle in a cream-colored dress she had sewn herself, simple and elegant, her hair loosely pinned, wisps dancing in the breeze. She held no bouquet, just a granola bar in her pocket, as if honoring the journey that had brought her here. Logan stood at the front. No tuxedo, no corporate polish. Just a well-worn gray suit, a steady gaze, and the kind of smile only a man who'd finally understood what mattered could wear. As she reached him, he leaned in and whispered so only she could hear, his voice tender with disbelief and quiet gratitude. "Who would have thought that the woman who changed my life would walk into it carrying a bag of granola?" Emily laughed softly, squeezing his hand. And in that laugh was every late-night walk, every act of unseen kindness, every moment she chose heart over convenience, humanity over ambition. They didn't exchange long vows. They didn't need to. Their eyes, their presence, the silence between words. It said enough. They kissed, not as two people finishing a story, but as two souls starting one. No fairy godmother, no magic spells, just love. Earned, weathered, real. And as the sun dipped behind the skyline, casting long golden shadows across cracked pavement and garden paths, the city continued to hum around them. But in that garden, something sacred had begun. A modern fairy tale, not written in castles or carriages, but carved from compassion, courage, and a little granola. A love story built not on grandeur, but on grace. Do you believe that something as simple as a loaf of bread, a gentle question, or a kind glance could change someone's entire life? If you believe in the power of kindness, the quiet, everyday acts that carry a deep, lasting impact, leave a comment below that says, "I believe in kindness." And if this story touched your heart, rate it from 1 to 10 in the comments and tell us, what moved you the most? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel because the next story might be a reflection of your own memories, dreams, or hopes. Sometimes, all it takes is the right story at the right time to warm a heart for a lifetime.